folks, it's Ben. We're exploring our Iron Duke, as I've never owned one before. I think this car was riddled with lack of maintenance issues, so that's kind of what we're fighting at this point. Hopefully we can salvage it, but we'll see where we go. The fuel filter's rusty, so it's obviously never been changed. And this filter is just not great. I mean, it's got the cool metal mesh, but it's not a K&N. And GM's design is kind of lame on the old thing here, because it's got a stud on it, but yeah, the nut locked on it, because they cinched this thing really down. Like it's an air filter, guys, not the Titanic. You can, and oh, that is super not good. Why is there oil in the manifold in the air breather here? That's fine. Where's my PVC? It's all down there. Why would there even be oil up here? I mean, there's nothing oily up here. Air tube, heat exchanger, air in. Why is there oil up here? Okay, maybe they oiled the filter to get it done? I don't know. I think what we're gonna do though is pull the plugs and see if we can get it to turn over. That'll be my first step. Put a wrench on it and it doesn't currently move, so I'm not fighting compression, but need to be sure. Now it's becoming Thursday. So on top of the valve cover, there's this guy, which is some sort of valve. I thought this would be the positive crankcase ventilation going into the intake here on the vacuum side of the throttle plate, but it seems like this would be leaking all our oil, which means that let's work somehow. Must just pop out somehow. Oil's coming from that and into my air intake, so we already had some fairly vicious blow-by perhaps, so maybe we are a little hosed. Tough to say. Maybe it's just been neglected and they never changed things. Tough to say still, but we're going along. I'm going to tripod you in and we'll pluck these wires. We'll label them 1 through 4, and that way at least they'll be in the firing order they came off in. Not going to pretend like they're in the right order now, but just to see if we can get this thing to turn over, or are we already yanking this engine out of here and parking the chassis somewhere and figuring something out for this winter. Oh boy. So there's so much grease, that's dirt and gravel and oil, that has fallen from the valve cover down to the spark plugs that I can't even get the wrench on because it's so buried in dirt. So I'm gonna have to get a pick that out before I can even get a socket on the spark plug to get it out. So that's fun. Let me grab my lamp and I'm going to save you the time and just time lapse you on that. So spark plug number 1, interestingly enough, is wet. With what? I don't know. It's what brand is it? I don't know. Did have to dig it out. Oh, it's I don't know if that's the right size for 43TS or 43TS AC Delco. So yeah, it's the right one. Probably the original one, to be honest with you. Actually, not looking that bad. That gap is big. How big's the gap supposed to be? There's one out. Got 3 to go. See if they're all wet. Probably is oil. Guessing she's an oil burner, and that's a problem when you only have like 3.5 quarts of oil. So, interesting little thing going on here. So, plug 1 was wet. She's actually gapped to about 60, about 55 thousandths. That's where she's at. Plug 2 is perfect. It's just right. And it's actually gapped to about 35. Cylinder 3 is hot, and she's just about 60 as well. And cylinder 4 is actually maybe not quite as hot, a little more sooty. Okay, I guess. And it is also at about 55. So interesting spread of gaps here. But now that our motor's opened up, should be able to stick a wrench on this thing, on the bolt downstairs below, and give her a old tug and see if we can get this thing to turn around a bit on her own. If so, maybe we'll stick a battery in it. That'd be cool. That means we could maybe drive it, but let's get there first. Looks like she's fairly seized up, unfortunately. So I guess now we'll be looking at options to see what we can do to get it out of here. Not quite sure where part 1 of this started, so we'll just kind of recap what's going on, just to kind of make it a documentary type what's going on here. So long story short, these lugs are impossible to get off. My key is too worn. The index there is too worn. Now, I'm guessing they might have been put on with an impact, and it shattered the pattern between my key and the lug nut. I can't get them off. They're too tight, and it just slips, and it's super frustrating. So I've been chewing on these things for like almost 2 weeks now. But I need to get, because the next video, not this video, but the next video maybe, I'm going up to U Picket Yard to get some parts and hopefully a motor for this thing. So I really needed to know how badly seized is this motor. Is it like crap? Is it gone? So as you can see, here's the damage. I ended up taking it, I did 3 steps. Went with an 1/8 bit, whatever size that is, and not that one, actually. The other one's still on my drill. And it was able to actually drill out the stud and actually break it off. Now, putting on a new stud's actually not that tough, and they're like $3. So we'll press this one out, we'll press the new one in, and we'll be back to normal there on a regular car. But what getting the wheel off did for me, and now we're sitting on the jack stand, is let me get access to the underneath of the motor you see here, right? And so I did put a long wrench and what was it, a 15/16 socket, I think it was. And notice I have a jack right here. So I put it on there. I couldn't move it by hand at all. It was locked up tight. So I'm like, well, let me just try the jack and the weight of the car. So I went ahead and put my ratchet slash bar, breaker bar on that and used the jack to lift up, and it lifted the motor up. But you know what it did? It slowly came down. And it wasn't the jack slipping, it was the motor actually starting to turn over, which I'm like, holy crap, Batman, that's amazing. So I did that a couple times, and every time you do it, it gets a little bit easier to turn. Now, that doesn't mean that it hasn't still spun a bearing, but what it does mean is it hasn't completely seized, which is fantastic news. So back to the top we go. I don't know if my wrench is still here. My wrench is even still here, so how convenient for that. So I get pounding on this thing with my super duper breaker bar at this point. There's my large ratchet, my socket, and this guy here, and I get it to pull maybe a quarter of a revolution. I'm like, okay, this is great news. Maybe we aren't as bad as we thought we were. Like, I had written it off. It was toast. Given the story I was given that it had run to death and then stalled, that we were gone. The spark plugs are already out. That part I'm probably sure I remember filming. And so what I did is I pounded the deep creep, seafoam deep creep, into each cylinder. And the more I spun it, the easier it gets to turn. So what I ended up doing is, that was last night. So today what I'll do is I'll tripod the camera over there and we'll turn it some more. I'm hoping it will turn some more. And we'll just see how free it is. Honestly, I think it's almost free enough to throw the battery in and reattach the ground cable, because it took that off for space. Maybe get the starter to turn it over. And if that's the case, we are really working it here. So cool. So here we are. I haven't actually cranked on it today, although I was saying it was turning over fairly decent yesterday. Here's my ground that I've unbolted. Hoping to, I guess we're pushing it. And it turns easy. I say easy. I haven't actually turned an engine over by hand without spark plugs in it. That's been a 4-cylinder. It's been a long time. It's hard to reference when how hard it is. It's fairly hard. There are points where, like now, it's a little bit harder than others, but like this engine is, I would consider free. So it's not gonna kill my starter. It might not be that enthusiastic, but honestly, I think we're probably good to throw the digicals back on this thing and hit it with the starter, see what she does. So with the brush for cleaning contacts and everything, putting it all back together again, and a battery that may or may not have 12 volts that's showing on it, but the lights are on. I know my little bread warmer light's not working. This guy has gremlins, that we know. So I'll push the clutch in and we'll hit the start button, and we'll know if the starter solenoid engages, and if it cranks over, well, that will be even neater, but let's just figure it out. It does turn over, so we're not going to wreck the starter. Are you ready?
Yep.
Got a fuel pump.
Yep.
Well, that was very promising.
It's spraying fuel everywhere.
That's good.
Like, that is definitely working.
So, our not, oh yeah, and it's old. So our not cranking engine has turned into a cranking engine. It should be fairly smooth, but who knows what wear it's got on it for stuff. So we're gonna go ahead and drop the sparkulators back in their holes and see what happens. Okay, so here we have, always need to put something in front of me here. We've got 4 plugs. These happen to be NGK LR UR 5 GPs. According to the Pontiac forums, these are cool too over the ACs, and they happen to be out of the 86 2.8. So I got to regap them to 60 thousandths, and we'll put some anti-seize on them, stick them down the holes, and I'm just going to go ahead and assume that the plug wires are in the correct order. We'll see if it'll turn under compression anyway, and maybe we'll get it to bark off. We don't know yet. We'll see when we get there. So we'll time lapse this because it'll be boring and slow. Okay, so we did the successful cranks over on its own test, so that's way above what we bought the car because it was seized at the time. So we got that going for us. I threw some plugs in, which I showed the camera. They're gapped to 60 thousandths. They're all plugged in, hoping the distributor's in the right firing order. I had the other Fiero owner stare at the injector, and it was peeing fuel while we were cranking, so the pressure system's pressuring. So we have fuel there. The throttle position sensor is broken, was when I bought it, so that's not going to be a ton of help for us, but let's see if it barks off, and if it does, if it's got a bad knock or not. It's really. I did top it off with coolant. It was quite low. Probably threw 1/4 gallon in, so that'll help out too. Hopefully it's not leaking internally into the oil. And for reference, I did throw in half a jar of seafoam, and I threw a whole other quart of oil in it. So it's probably slightly overfilled, but at this point I don't mind. We're not taking it anywhere, and if it does run, we're gonna pretty much dump the oil that's in it now anyway. So let's give it a try, see what happens. Contact. It's hard to tell burnt gas from really bad gas, but clearly we're not burning anything. So let's go ahead and lift out one, and we'll zoom in on that and see how that goes for us. Going?
Yep.
All right, let's try spark test 1. Not the brake or the clutch? It's the clutch. Anything?
Spark.
There is spark?
Yes.
Oh. Okay, cool. It's work. So there is spark. I don't know if the camera catches it. Rarely does it ever. So we do have spark going on here. So next we're looking at fuel delivery. If we have spark in the sparkulators, that means our fuel delivery system isn't necessarily doing it because we got the, and I don't even know if I have compression. It's kind of la 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 la, but I'm assuming it does because I don't have a compression tester with me. But we have compression in theory. We have spark in theory. Next we got to come up here to the fuel delivery system, and we'll probably check fuel pressure. There's a do these TBI systems have Schrader valves? That's a great question. I'm guessing because it's a new fuel pump that they were hunting that down too. Whoever owned it prior to me.
Like, it really sends a lot of gas through that TPI.
Right. This is just something's, or our plug order is wrong.
Could be. Mm-hmm.
And that could be it too. You think that something would catch fire at some point, but let's check on that. I got a manual. We'll just double check the distributor, make sure it's going to the right holes. Because it wouldn't be on the plug ends. The plugs are the right length, or the spark plug wires are on the right length. But if it's not plugged into the distributor correctly,
Yeah.
so let's I'll check that, and then we'll point at fuel after that. Go ahead and give it a crank over for like 5 seconds or whatever.
Oh dear.
It's a lot.
And you just made a
Perfect.
giant mess.
Yeah. I just sprayed gasoline all over the engine compartment of a Fiero.
Electrical
News at
parts.
9.
Don't burn mine.
Ready?
Fed. Yes. Ready.
So in a final act of desperation, we went ahead and put gas in the car. We're getting a, let's call it a liquid spray out of the injector, but I don't know if that's water. The gas gauge doesn't work, so we don't know if it was running on empty and was sucking the water out of the tank. But a load of sea foam and some fuel, that just churned the tank over a bunch.
Fresh fuel. Yeah.
Fresh fuel. Let's see what that does for me. As long as our battery holds out. Starter looks like it's easy to get to, so that won't be too hard to change. Carpet's right there, that's annoying. Losing the battery.
Totally losing the battery.
So in my continuing thoughts of the fuel system, I've since been to a salvage yard and I picked up a new throttle, not new to me, throttle position sensor. In fact, that's upside down. But the note is that the one that I took off the TBI I have now has a heat shield, and the one that's on there now doesn't. So what I'm actually going to do is it's an 8mm socket. So I'm going to take my wrench. It's very hard to get there with the EGR on, and you can see they already broke that. So there's a stud broken in there. So I wouldn't even attempt the other side until I can at least get that soaked for a couple days. So I should probably start on that now. Of course it deals with exhaust, so it's also going to be a toughie, but is that cast in? I'm not sure, but probably. So anyway, I got to use a wrench and pop this one out, put the new one in, and that might help us too, car knowing where the throttle is. Alrighty, we have a charged battery. The throttle position cable is now connected to the throttle position sensor. We've got all that awesomeness in. We also changed the oil, which was really bad. Put a new filter in that was the correct size. So let's give it a spin and see if we can just crank it for a while and not have anything happen. Who knows? Let's find out. Oh, I took the seatbelt out too. Massive oil leak. I knew the valve cover had a gasket sitting in the trunk, but there's a huge puddle and running down my plate over there. Whoops, we never clicked that back in either. Because the valve cover, I don't think it has a gasket. I think it's just on there. So it leaks like I said, but that didn't fix our issue, but I also got some stuff up my sleeve. We'll see what we can do. I guess one final try before we wrap it up on this video. So obviously we got the motor freed up and we've got spark going on there. We did change the oil, found out that there's no gasket for the valve cover, so now the engine's coated in oil, so that's fun on a bun. Still not 100% sure on the fuel. It's spraying, so you think it would bark off, but it's not. Check the distributor. It's pointed in the right direction, so we're close there. So I'm just gonna pee some gas down this one more time, give it a spin over, and if not, then we'll see you next time. But I think it got real close last time, so not 100% sure that it's not the problem. Okay. Hey, a backfire.
So close.
Yeah, unfortunately though, she's puffing gas out of this like you wouldn't believe. Fumes out of the valve cover gasket. I wonder if they're related. Like it was peeing out so much.
There's a compression problem because it's...
Yeah, there's a hole in a piston or something. Head gasket's gone, something like that. Here, let me give it some crank and then see what we can do. Well, that's a bad knock.
and smoke.
Okay, one more try. Man, she's smoky. Well, I gotta call it a video on that because I got stuff to do today, but is it a runner? Almost. But we definitely got to get the battery recharged again. Likes to be open about 3/4 throttle, actually, before I get a little kick action going on there. Man, is there oil everywhere. But yeah, if you guys have any questions or comments would be appreciated, since it's my first Duke that's been giving me some troubles. Let's go ahead and put that on 2 amp and we'll just charge the battery the rest of the night. Don't need to boil it off. If you have any other things, just let me know. Subscribe to my channel, Turbo231, for more updates on this girl and every other Fiero we have. And we'll see you next time. I don't know what I've got for a slow motion video. Maybe I'll zoom you in on that and we'll give it one more crank over. You can take a look at the squirty squirt of the squirt.